Right, so in my last video I touched on how maybe sticking to the typical diet in your current country probably isn't a great idea. For example, I'm from the UK, and I know that most of my viewership's in America. I'm not going to go into so much the problems of the standard American and standard British diet, because I feel like this map makes it pretty evident. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this map, and I'm going to ask you to think, what do all of these blue arrows have in common? And this might surprise you with this one over here in California, I think. So those locations are what are known as blue zones, which are areas with lower rates of chronic diseases and a longer life. So on the map we had Greece, Italy, Japan, Costa Rica, and California in USA. Now I'm going to point out that this isn't the entire country. This is certain communities and geographical locations that have specific lifestyles and diets. Now, in this video, I'm going to be focusing on diet specifically, and we're going to, for ease of transition, have a look at the Mediterranean diet, but not the normal Mediterranean diet. We're going to look at the Mediterranean diet in combination with a high protein intake. Now, this is optional, but once we calculate this number here, you're going to realize how far below the recommended intake of protein you likely are to be. Now, I want to do this in a way where you're not left guessing, but you have actionable steps that you can follow that will leave you with a far better diet than where you are currently. And I'm only going to recommend things that are going to help you control your weight and also make you feel better, because the problem with the very simplistic form of just counting calories and increasing your protein can mean that people will just go and have McDonald's 3 meals a day, keep within their calorie intake, feel like shit, quit their diet because the food isn't satiating enough and they're feeling like they need to eat more. So before we get into that, we need to gather some data. So first we want your weight and height. And the reason we're doing this is so we can calculate your calories and protein. So you need to get a hold of a scale and a tape measure of some sort and get these numbers. What I'd do is I wouldn't bother going to a calorie counting website. I'd just immediately go onto MyFitnessPal, download it on your phone. It's a free app. I've been using it for maybe 5 or 6 years now. And this isn't every day. I'm not telling you that you need to count your calories every day because it's just not sustainable. We're just going to use this to get some goals. So what it'll do when you download it is it'll ask you for your height and your weight, enter those, and it'll ask for your goal. Now, we need to decide whether you need to gain or lose weight. And a good way of doing this without getting obsessed with the numbers, which I feel like a lot of people are hesitant to do, is just to simply use a body fat chart. I'm going to assume you're a male, and if that is the case, you want to be somewhere in the low to high teens. If you're in the high teens, I'd recommend that you lose weight for a while, and if you're in the low teens, gain weight. Now, the reason that we're doing this is because remaining this sub 10% ideal body fat is the kind of masochism that you'd only do if you're an Instagram influencer with 1 million followers and you're getting paid to sell your soul. Being at this body fat sucks unless you're on performance enhancing drugs, or you're a genetic freak and you're part of the 0.001% of people. This is the sweet spot, these three here. Now, what I'd also recommend is it's very easy to quickly get into the mindset that you're not in the shape that you'd like to be, even when you fall into these categories. So I'd actually, every time that you do this, ask a friend or a family member to confirm your expectations, because body dysmorphia is more common than you'd expect, and you don't want to actually be here, but you look in the mirror and you feel like you're at this position, so you lose weight and you're going to end up wreaking havoc with your body. Right, so once you've decided if you're going to gain or lose, back to MyFitnessPal, when you put in your height and weight, it's going to ask you, do you want to gain or do you want to lose? Pick the second option. So depending on whether you picked gain or lose, it's going to give you options, and you might look at it and think, 2 pounds a week, or whatever the kilogram equivalent is, that seems achievable. Don't do that. All that's going to happen is that you're going to be given far too little to eat. You're going to get to day 3 and you're going to be so hungry that your primal part of your brain is going to kick in, and you're going to eat that bucket of ice cream that's been sat at the bottom of the freezer for the past 2 months, because that's what happened to me when I was when I was overzealous with this. So just go for the recommended amount, which is typically your second choice. So I think gaining is like for like. So if you're on the gain screen, it'd be gain 1 pound a week. Lose is lose 1 pound a week. And what that'll do is it'll take you to your calories. You can just leave that there because you're probably going to remember where it is. But what you want to do now is calculate your proteins. So I typically go for the upper bound, but this is the recommendation between 1.6 and 2.2. So take your weight, whether you've done it in pounds or kilograms, and times it by this quantity. So for example, I'm 80 kilograms. and I want to do the upper limit of protein, which is 2.2. So I need about 176 grams of protein per day if I want to achieve my goal. The last thing I'm going to suggest is you take a progress picture, maybe weekly, just so in a few months' time, when you look back feeling like you haven't made a change, you'll see it. Because the problem is with weight loss is that if you're doing it steadily and sustainably, you're not going to have these immediate overnight successes that YouTube propagates all the time. It's going to be a very slow process, but what you get at the end will be well worth it. So let's take your inputs. I'm going to assume here that you want 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. How do we use this information to turn it into meaningful meals that are time efficient, healthy, and contribute to our goal? If I divide mine by 3, I get 60 grams of protein per meal and 800 calories. Now, at this point, what you could do is you could go online, start looking up recipes that are part of the Mediterranean diet, or maybe if you have stomach issues, you could go for something like the vertical diet, which is mostly beef, rice and stock with mixed vegetables. And you could compile a bunch of recipes together, spend the time working out your shopping list, go to the shops, come back, try and make it, probably lose place of where your recipes are, get to the second week and be like, do I want to spend all this time trying to work out a bunch of different new recipes for me to try, or shall I just go back to the recipes I know? Now, we don't want to get trapped in that because that's way too much time and we're about optimizing here. So what I do is simply type this prompt into ChatGPT, and this will completely change your shopping and meal prep. It's so easy. So insert the amount of calories that you need and the amount of protein. I think I've lowballed it here because I was doing it for somebody else. And I say, give me a breakfast and dinner, except double the size of the dinners because I'll reserve half for lunch the next day. And what I do is when I finish cooking, I just, as I'm about to dish it up, put half into Tupperware and half into my bowl, except I don't even do that. I cook for my partner as well. So I add about 2/3 onto each of these, which we'll get into later because this is very easy to automate. And then I do 2 meals split for her and I, and then 2 meals into Tupperware for her and I for dinner. And then we microwave that the next day if we're in the office or working from home. Right, so if we scroll through this, you'll see that we have a breakfast here of Greek yogurt, protein powder, almonds. We've got a dinner of grilled chicken breast, quinoa, broccoli, olive oil. Now, what I would recommend for this, and just type it into GPT, when it comes to making these meals, you might think, oh, I don't know how to prepare these things, and also they look kind of bland, and that's because it isn't including the seasoning. So just ask, say, hi, dinner for day 1, how should I cook it, and how can I season it? How should I cook it, and how should I season it? So again, we got, look, day 2, breakfast, 800 calories, got cottage cheese, protein powder again, walnuts. If there's anything that you don't like, again, just say, I don't like day 2, whatever item, rewrite the list. And you'll see that we've generated in a minute our shopping for the next 3 days. Now, I only did 3 days because one of the caveats of being on a Mediterranean diet or a high veg diet is that if you're buying fresh fruit and veg, you don't want it sitting around for a week. So I tend to go every 3 days. And with the time that you're not spending faffing about trying to work out what food you need, what kind of meals you can make, because this is just immediately giving it to you, you're probably spending less time going twice a week than once and not having a solid plan. Now, this isn't where this ends, because what you can ask at the end is for it to sum up the items that it's done and show them by aisle. And then this is what you copy paste in your to-do app. And suddenly you go dairy aisle, okay, pick up the yogurt, the cheese and the egg. Go to the meat section, pick up chicken breast, salmon, tuna steaks, and so on. And you go home and you don't even have to think about the meals that they're relevant for. And then when it comes to actually cooking these things, you've got them all separated up here. Okay, so you've got a GPT-generated shopping list. Maybe as you're generating your file, you can see I've actually asked it for quite a few meals. I've done a fair amount of iterations of this. It's going to learn as you go. So if you say, okay, over the last 2 weeks, how's my diet been? Is there anything that I've missed out on? It's going to be able to look through and give you dietitian level feedback on where you're at. The initial time, I would just use my prompt, which I'll leave in the description. But this isn't the final step because we want to make sure that we're covering the bases. After 1 to 3 months, sooner if you're having problems, if you start having terrible reactions to this kind of food, obviously just go back to what you were doing or pick an elimination diet, because there's going to be such a variety of different people that might take this advice. There's no guarantee that your body's going to react well to a Mediterranean diet. But yeah, after 1 to 3 months, reassess. And the way that you're going to reassess is get blood tests. This is such an overlooked component of modern health. We have the technology and it's not cheap, but it's by no means expensive for the return on investment of something like a blood test, because you could be on a multivitamin that supposedly covers all of your micronutrients, but if your body has a hard time digesting iron, you could be deficient in iron despite having loads of spinach and a multivitamin. And the only way that you'll know that is if you go and get blood tests of a broad enough spectrum. So go and get a general blood test that hits as many markers as you can, and then look at what you're lacking and simply update your prompts. Now, obviously getting a blood test every 3 months would be mental. So after that initial 1 to 3 months, push it up to once or twice a year. Maybe have that initial blood test after doing the diet for a month or two, find your deficiencies, spend a couple of months targeting those deficiencies, and then do another blood test. And if you're stable, that's when you start doing them maybe once or twice a year. And this way you have covered pretty much all of the low-hanging fruit of diet. You're not going to be in the top 10%, you're likely to be in the top 0.5% of people, because how many people in your country are overweight and unhealthy? You're looking at the average person is overweight and unhealthy if it's a 60% overweight metric. So then of the 40% who are in a healthy weight, what percentage are going to these lengths to actually maintain lean body mass, have enough protein to support fitness, which I'm assuming if you've watched my previous video, you're building towards better strength, endurance, and maybe have some goals to do with fitness. And also you're keeping your body fat low, which are all tenets of what you see in blue zones with the caveat of protein. But this was me basing things on the assumption that you want to be strong and healthy, not just skinny. So again, just to summarize, use your weight and height to work out how many calories you need and how much protein you need. Use the body fat chart to work out whether you're gaining or losing weight. Remember, we don't want to go too low and we don't want to go too high, because being overweight and underweight both have quite severe health consequences. The progress pictures really are just kind of an added benefit, but I think in the long run, if you'd committed to this for a year, you would wish that you would have the pictures to look back on, because it's quite easy for things to become the new norm. If you lose some weight or gain some weight, suddenly that's just your weight. You kind of forget what you used to look like. So if you can just take your shirt off, take a picture no matter what weight you're at, just to give yourself some milestones. So when you're flicking through your old camera roll, you can say, oh God, yeah, that's where I started. Here's where I am now. I should stick to this. And just in general, the rest of this is built for making you feel better. It's going to give you the focus and clarity that you need when it comes to working. So I hope this helps. If you really want to start min-maxing your health, this is all well and good, but in reality, it needs to be paired with a good fitness routine. So if you click this video here, it'll direct you to my framework. And again, I give step-by-step protocols to go from complete beginner to intermediate and then beyond if you want to start running ultramarathons like David Goggins or becoming a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I've got it covered. So head on over there.